And this week, the Parsha is called Shelach Lecha. And as usual, the Parsha's name comes from the first distinctive word in the Torah reading. Ve'adaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. God spoke to Moses saying, nothing distinctive there. Shelach lecha anashim. Send forth men to scout out the land of Canaan that I am giving to you. And so Moses sends 12 spies as instructed, one for each tribe, to get a sense of the lay of the land ahead. And the spies come across extremely fertile land. And in fact, we read here, they came into the valley of Eshcol, which literally means branch. Eshcol, or actually cluster. And they cut down from there a branch with one cluster of grapes, and they bore it upon a pole between two. It took 2 men to carry these grapes. And they took also the pomegranates and of the figs, and that place was called the Valley of Eshcol cluster, because of the cluster which the children of Israel cut down from there. Some of you may know that the ministry of tourism in Israel, the symbol is two men carrying a cluster of grapes between them, those who scouted out the land. And every time we come across this, I remember the time when many years ago, and I was studying in Israel for a year, and we had a teacher who would teach history of the Jewish people in their land, and then we would go out to places to see that land. And we went to the city of Jericho, went to the excavation of Jericho, where the old city had been excavated. And we stood there, and he read the account of Joshua, the next generation, sending in 2 spies, and how then those 2 spies had to flee to the mountains. So we read that section from the book of Joshua right there. And then he said, look up, there are the mountains. And he said, now we're going to the mountains. So we started walking to the mountains, and we walked to the foot of the mountains. And then he said, now we're going to climb the mountains. And we started climbing, and he said, it's just around the corner. We went around the corner, and it was another corner. It was just around the corner. We went around the corner, it was another corner, and just around the corner. We got up to the very top. And it was brown. Everything was brown all around us, looking over the valley, over Jericho. And in the distance, on this side, a green strip, very narrow green strip, which was along the Jordan River. And then at Jericho was emerald green. Emerald green. I said, oh, of course, Jericho's an oasis. There's water, and it is fertile. And it was just brilliant green. So this is not so hard to understand. I mean, the grapes could have been that big, or if not, or it's an expression of just how, by contrast, how brilliantly fertile that is. Of course, Torah is compared to water, because water is life. Just add water to the arid soil and it springs to life. So, but it was a fertile land. The spies bring a report back about this fertile land. 12 spies coming back after 40 days. But 10 of them said, they also said, the land through which we have passed to spy it out is a land that eats up the inhabitants of it. All the people there are huge. There's giants and children of giants, and there's no way that we can overcome this because Vanihi ve'einenu kechagavim v'chen chayinu be'einehem. In our eyes, we were like grasshoppers, and so we were in their eyes. That's how they report back. The people who live there are huge, and we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who come of the Nephilim, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. There is a profound lesson here. They saw themselves as grasshoppers, If you are as grasshoppers in your own estimation, you may seem as small as grasshoppers in the eyes of others. And certainly you will think you look like grasshoppers to others. The interesting thing here is that the spies were sent out to scout the land in front of them, but what they saw was the landscape within themselves. There's a deep lesson to be seen here about how you see yourself in the course of your life and your future. How we see ourselves and our prospects impacts the dreams and desires we consider for ourselves, and that can have a profound impact on where we ultimately end up in life. In the story laid out in this week's Parsha, the consequences spin out in a complex plot. 10 of the spies bring back this disheartening account, which at the very least is a disheartening self-assessment. 2 of the spies, Joshua and Caleb, actually have a different interpretation. They are encouraging. They are saying to the people, no need for despair. We can do it. You can do it. The people have 2 alternative visions in front of them, 2 alternative self-assessments, and the people choose the negative one, the grasshopper one. They actually say, here's what they say. We read in the Parsha, all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel murmured against Moses and against Aaron, and the whole congregation said to them, wouldn't it have been better if we had died in the land of Egypt? Or wouldn't it have been better if we had died in this wilderness? Why does the Lord bring us into this land to fall by the sword? Our wives and our children will be prey. Wouldn't it be better for us to return to Egypt? They said to one another, let us make a captain and let us return to Egypt. And Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the children of Israel. And Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Yefuneh, who were the 2 that spied out the land, that brought out a more positive report, they tried to convince the people otherwise. But to no avail. Then a very interesting and persistent dynamic plays out between God and Moses, a dynamic that plays out a lot in the Torah. Moses starts arguing both with the people and with God. God gets very angry at this. The Lord said to Moses, how long will this people despise me? How long will they not trust me for all the signs which I have wrought among them? I will smite them with the pestilence and destroy them, and I will make of you a nation greater and mightier than they. And Moses says, he becomes very bold. He becomes very bold. Moses says, when the Egyptians hear this, for you brought up this people in your might from among them, they will say to the inhabitants of this land who have heard that you, Lord, are in the midst of this people, inasmuch as you were seen face to face, your cloud stands over them as a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. If you shall kill this people, then the nations which have heard of you will speak, saying, because the Lord was not able to bring this people into the land which you swore to them, therefore you killed them in the wilderness. So, I pray you, let the power of the Lord be great according as you have spoken. You've said the Lord is slow to anger and plenteous in loving kindness, forgiving iniquity and transgression. that will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, upon the third and upon the fourth generation. And of course, we've heard elsewhere, but remembering the kindnesses to 1,000. Moses starts arguing with both the people and with God. This will seem very strange if you view the Torah as a staid piece of philosophical theology influenced by Greek assumptions of perfection and piety. So much of Western religion views the Torah as a staid piece of theology influenced by Greek assumptions that God is perfect, and perfect means unchanging, and therefore removed from life, especially emotional life, and that the proper response to such a God is intense piety and reverence to the point of passivity. Whereas when you read the Torah, everyone, including God, is passionate and interactive and emotional. The Torah in this way really is a very human book. It is about human emotions, human issues, human struggles. The Torah is about keeping it real, not a facade of piety. Remember, to be the children of Israel is to be the descendants of Yisrael, the descendant of the one who wrestled with God and humans in the story of Jacob wrestling with the angel. Effectively, in the words of the late Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi, and expanded by the late Rabbi Arthur Waskow in his book God Wrestling, Israel means God wrestler. And in this and in so many other sections of the Torah, a real wrestle is going on, which is a reflection of the human emotion and the human condition in regards to the divine that ultimately the Torah is about. God gets very angry, and Moses gets very bold, as he often does. Moses takes on the simultaneous role of arguing with the people that they must be more trustful, probably trustful in general as well as trustful in God, despite their experience of 400 years of captivity and oppression under the Egyptians. We might talk about trauma today, about all of that. They have a hard time being that trusting. And Moses at the same time argues with God that God must be more understanding, patient, tolerant, forgiving of the people's failings. This is part of what makes the Torah such a human book. Not a book about some ethereal divine principles removed from the life of real human beings, but a book of down and dirty struggles of human aspirations to be and to do better than they have up till now done. Rabbi Arthur Green has talked about the tension of leading a community in this way, as Moses is doing, as the tension between Ahavat Yisrael and Ahavat Torah. Ahavat Yisrael is love of Israel, love of the people of Israel, which means loving the people even with all their failings, even when they are trampling all over Torah. And Ahavat Torah is love of Torah, which means loving and wanting to protect Torah even as the people are walking all over it. A leader of Israel, like Moses is, a leader of Israel, any leader of Israel, has to hold on to both Ahavat Yisrael and Ahavat Torah at the same time. Even when the people are failing in their effort to uphold Torah, and the Torah seems to the people to be too much. Again, this is a very human struggle because the Torah does not exist in a vacuum. It exists in the context of human lives striving to be better. And this is a very different way of viewing the Torah than is common within so much of Western religious tradition. So much of Western religious tradition also being Christian tradition, but this is a very Jewish way. So this emotional struggle opens up with God getting very angry at the people, and Moses arguing back, you can't afford to do this, God. It's not in your interest. And then God's reaction is, Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha. God said, Salachti kidvarecha. I forgive in accordance with your word. And in the Kol Nidre service, we quote that. After reciting Kol Nidre at the beginning of Yom Kippur, we sing, Vayomer Adonai, Salachti kidvarecha. Does it sound familiar at all? Vayomer Adonai, Salachti kidvarecha. Vayomer Adonai, Salachti kidvarecha. So we quote God's words back. God said, I forgive in accordance with your word. We quote back to God that God forgives as God forgave in this moment, as God forgave in giving the Torah a second time, right? We went up the Torah, we come down, we went up to get the Torah, we come down, and then when they come down, we're worshiping the golden calf. Forgiveness, when we get the Torah another chance. And later in this Parsha, in Numbers 15, the Torah makes a large distinction between sins and transgressions that are made accidentally, bishgaga, versus sins and transgressions that are done with a high hand, arrogantly. Those that are done accidentally are very forgivable. Those that are done arrogantly are not so forgivable. And in our Yom Kippur liturgy, which we will see soon enough coming up, the rabbis make this move that all our transgressions are bishkaka, all our transgressions are in error. Because if we truly understood what we were doing, we wouldn't do it. So, the emphasis consistently is of God's compassion, the argument for mercy and forgiveness overcoming the argument for punishment. It's always about a balance between compassion and justice. Too much compassion and there's not enough justice. Too much justice and there's not enough compassion. Because it's not that there's no consequences. In this parsha, there is a consequence. The people will not be, this generation will not be going into the land. They will wander 1 year for every day that the spies were in the land, according to this narrative. 40 years of wandering. Is that a punishment? Or is it a recognition on God's part that that generation which came out of Egypt is never going to be able to move in, never going to be able to move forward? So 40 years, so the next generation grows up and leads the people in. But in the meantime, we live a life remembering to do mitzvot. Remember to do mitzvot. So I'll conclude with this, where the parsha concludes. Reading about the tzitzit. We look upon the tzitzit and remember the mitzvot. Remember the path of both compassion, justice and compassion. The way the parsha ends, the Lord spoke to Moses saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and have them make throughout their generations tzitzit in the corners of their garments, that they put on the fringe of each tzitzit, a thread of royal blue, and it shall be unto you as a tzitzit, that you may look upon it, and remember all the mitzvot of the Lord and do them, that you do not go about after your own heart or after your own eyes, after which you used to go astray, but that you remember and do all my commandments and be holy to your God. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I, Adonai, am your God." I just want to say, Adonai, Elohechem, Emet. Shabbat Shalom.